Alrighty, folks, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the January 12th Silver Lake Regional School Committee meeting. Happy New Year to everyone. I would... Oh. Okay. I'm going to ask you to... Oh, okay. You're all... Okay. So, no, not your fault at all. I'd like to begin this evening's meeting with a moment of silence. Over the holiday break, we did lose a member of our school community. We lost a 12th grader, Aiden Ramsey, and I would ask that we all stand for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And our hearts and our prayers go out to his family. Okay, public participation. Okay, I'm not seeing any for this evening. I would like to, before reorg, take a moment and welcome Laurie to our committee. We're thrilled to have you. I'd like to maybe go around the table and introduce everybody so that I make sure that you know who we are and our roles and everything on the side of the table as well. So I'll start. I'm Paula Hatch. I am chair of Silver Lake. I've been on Silver Lake, I want to say it's 15, 16 years now. And I was on the elementary school before that. So happy to help you in any way, thrilled to have you, and welcome aboard. And I'm from Halifax as well.
Yeah, Chris Ekman from Kingston. Been about 5 years, I think.
Gordon Laws from Halifax, and coming up on 2 years.
Nice to meet you. In Fort Wright, Houston, 8 months, I think.
Summer Schmeling, I'm a Halifax representative, and I lost track of how long I've been on all this meeting, so here I am. For this today. Or for all, okay. I sit on Halifax as well, and elementary as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping track of me.
Well, we came on at the same time, you for Halifax and myself for Plimpton. So I'm on that school committee and this one. So yeah, 8 years on Silver Lake, 9 years on Plimpton.
Welcome to Carrington Valley. We've talked. It's nice to meet you. I'm Jill's executive assistant.
Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
Welcome. My name is Becky Pratt. I'm the principal of the middle school.
Oh, nice to meet you. Hi, my name is Victoria Gill. I'm the principal here at Class. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Christine Haley, Director of Business Services.
Nice to meet you.
Ryan Lynch, Assistant Superintendent.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Jill Prue, Superintendent. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you in person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So now I'd like to take a moment in reorg because the role of vice chair is open as well as a couple of subcommittee seats. So if we could, if there's any nominations for vice chair, I would welcome to hear them.
When Chris decided he was going to retire for a brief period of time last year, I lamented the fact that I thought he would make a great chair someday. So I'm thrilled when he rejoined us, and I would be happy to make a motion if Chris would so accept for him to be our vice chair.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Perfect. Thank you. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you.
We have two subcommittee openings that, and Karen, you can double check me if you want, but I know there's two, possibly more. Policy and negotiations with Emily's exit.
And admin review.
An admin review, okay. So I'm going to throw you under the bus as soon as you join. And I think your background would lend itself well to policy and admin review if you were willing to join those subcommittees.
Sure.
Okay? As far as negotiation, I had, Michael might be a good fit to come on to that. I understand he's been on negotiations for Kingston before, perhaps, so we can wait until the next meeting to firm that up, but I'm thinking perhaps he would be a good one. In summer, you're comfortable still being the alternate?
Yeah, Jill had asked me about an upcoming meeting in February.
February, yeah.
To kind of do some finagling with my schedule, but I'm still working on that.
Okay, all righty.
Paula, on the back there, calendar review and school start time, working group calendar is also.
You know, I'm going to hold those until Lucas and Michael, but thank you. The other ones I wanted to fill tonight, so, sure.
Would you like the ability to put Michael down for negotiations prior to the next meeting, though? Like, would you like-
I would,
Okay.
yeah,
So, I mean, as chair, would you, that within your purview?
right, yeah. I just want to chat with them. I tried to reach out to him, and I don't suspect there'll be an issue, but I just want to make sure. Okay then, folks, moving on. Approval of minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes of our December 8th, 2022 meeting.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Review of capital plan. I'll turn that over to
So,
you.
We did not have a safer meeting that oversees the capital plan for Silver Lake Regional Schools prior to tonight, because we decided as a committee that we would like to go through the capital plan as a group. Capital plan as it sits right now, I want everyone to understand, is a preliminary draft. It's at $1.5 million. We never had an intention as a subcommittee to bring this to the table for a vote for that number. In years past, the past 7 years, we've brought in capital plans typically between $800,000 and $600,000. So what we would be looking at for this capital plan is probably halving it. We also have a new interesting twist to how we fund our capital plan. We are getting to the point that we will no longer be able to sustain the capital plan funding purely from our E&D, which we have done over the past several years. We had some one-time funds in there from the separation from Pembroke, and a couple of other one-time funds had filled in our E&D fund. We're allowed to have up to 5% in that as a reserve. Anything that gets above 5% is supposed to return to the towns as a reduction in assessments. We've been funding the capital plan through E&D with the blessing of the 3 towns, their select boards and their finance committees. So I just want to put all of that history into this, and we need to take a look now at the items that are here. I'm happy to answer some questions about why items are on here. Chris has been really good at taking care of this capital plan over the past couple of years too, so I'm sure he could jump in anywhere I don't have answers for you. So, Madam Chair, I don't know where you would like to begin.
Do we want to step through it just at a high level? Partly because we have some folks from the public listening to the discussion, and it would be good for Laurie perhaps to hear.
All right, so Chris, you want to hit the admin building?
Sure. The description kind of nails most of it. The admin building, all aware of, is the sort of split level structure up front, built between 1965 and 1977. There are constant repairs and risks that we have to kind of go about fixing. We fixed the front door ledge where people have tripped. It's not ADA accessible. We had windows that just kind of fell with gravity and almost took some fingers off. In the capital plan now, we have some flooring repairs to do with carpet tiles that are peeling up, so that's a trip risk. That's an $18,000 repair. We've looked at doing a new admin building. We've done the studies in the past, so we just have never figured out how to move forward with them, whether to bring them into the main building, bring it into the middle school, keep it separate, put it somewhere else in the space we have here. But it's been unfunded, but it is a need. The district does not have the same needs for space for administration that we did back in the 70s, clearly. So that's where it sits. I think next steps from my understanding over the last few years is we want to try and get that as a capital plan project based on a debt funding of some sort, but there are so many interested parties, because when you look at a Silver Lake Regional Administration building, you have the 3 towns in their individual school committees that also have some voice in what this general administration building gets. It's not technically a Silver Lake only owned entity. So that's why we haven't funded it, but we have been nice enough, I guess, to fund the repairs.
Question, is that like a Union 31 big thing?
Yeah, I think we talked to Attorney Fred a year ago. It was who owns it, and we kind of enlightened ourselves by common sense, I suppose, that Silver Lake doesn't own it. And that's what we said. Well, I say we're being nice to do the repairs because technically we don't have to, but to get $18,000 for tiles from 4 committees, it's like it all flows through the towns anyways. Let's just own the repairs with a simple decision process, I guess is the point there. But I don't think we really are in the position to make that simple decision for a larger building or a new building.
Should this be on a joint agenda at some point to sort of start to expand the conversation on it?
Building board meeting that you,
We do, yeah.
Mid-February, I think?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be good to have that conversation right before town meeting too, like publicly, so that the public understands that we're coming forward with it soon, rather than later.
Yeah, and the funding is what's the interesting sort of piece that I think of. We have debt falling off on these buildings in a few years, but I don't believe the 3 towns at their elementary level have the same sort of timeline. So we've been kicking the bucket down the road for years in this one, but
So the plumbing pipes that
Plumbing.
potentially could cost us $20,000.
That's right. Functioning bathrooms, yes.
Might be something that, again, Silver Lake might kindly have to put onto its capital plan because of the timeliness of the project and the potentiality of not doing those repairs and the maintenance on the aging pipes and infrastructure for the sewage in the admin building. So, that's a $20,000 cost right there in the capital plan.
Yeah.
And below it, you'll notice that the high school and middle school have had extensive repairs since 2014 based on envelope study of our buildings. We had an amazing amount of water infiltration into both buildings because of shoddy building. We also had some water infiltration into the buildings because we were told by fire marshals we needed to shovel off the roofs the year of the snowpocalypse, and we punctured the membranes in several areas, which allowed water to seep into the roofs. Due to diligent work of the committee and Christine, we've managed to get the roofs back to the place that they're actually under full warranty again. At one point, we were looking at an $8 million roof replacement project. So the $200,000 you see there has been our standard allocation for taking care of that water infiltration over the past 7 years. The HVAC units on the roof of the building, this is the big cost right here. We're looking at $300,000 for 2 major HVAC units. And this is the best estimate we have is a verbal at this point, and it was several months ago. And just understanding where we're going with inflation and installation costs, I don't know if even $300,000 at this point is an accurate amount for that. High school bathrooms, ventilation issues, very poor air quality and moisture levels. So that's $35,000 you see there. High school electrical panels, these are in the Voc area, and it's to replace wiring that is 40 plus years old. Some of the wiring is original, the vocational wing of the building, which predates the part of the building that we're in right now. So that's a major safety concern and issue, and that would be about $50,000. Duct cleaning. We don't think that the ducts have ever been cleaned in the middle school or high school since they've been built. So it's probably a good idea for efficiency, but also for the health of the air quality in the buildings. That's $27,500. And in CTE, the doors that they currently have no bar value. So basically when you're heating the shops in the wintertime, all of that heat is going right out those bay doors. There's also been some incidents where they have come down when they weren't supposed to come down, putting materials and persons in jeopardy. So these doors would be modern doors with insulation value on them, and they would be automated as well. So that's $181,000 right there. Moving on to the track, this is one that we can have a more substantial conversation on. And this is a $200,000 item. Because one of the things that we discussed in large conversations with the three towns and with our capital plan is potentially putting in turf fields and potentially doing some sort of athletic complex here at Silver Lake when our debt finally falls off. And our debt's going to fall off in just 3 or 4 years. 27. So we're rapidly approaching the time where the debt for these two buildings will fall off of our accounting to the towns. So we're already having discussions with the three towns about utilizing some of that relief to put in an athletic complex, which could take care of the track, not having to replace it for $660,000. That could be part of that project. So the $20,000 you see here could potentially be held back for a year or two, depending on where we're looking for the athletic complex.
Jason, is that 20 or 200?
That's $200,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the resurfacing, the lining, making sure there's no cracks, again, it's a safety issue, making sure our athletes can safely run on it and that we can compete and lead competition. JV baseball field, to even out the turf, to make it again safer for our players and to have more consistent play for $60,000. And moving on to the back page, again, the scoreboard, sound system, sponsor video. We keep coming up with this as modernizing our outdoor facilities, but again, this could be something we discuss as we move forward with the idea of an athletic complex. And you see there the turf field or the entire athletic complex does have a line item holder for $250,000. We primarily put this on to get all of your attention, right? And the amount of money actually needed for some of the preliminary work that might need to be done, some of the siting, some of the surveying, would probably be a lot closer to $50,000. So again, that number was put there almost as a placeholder and to get the attention of the committee that we're serious about looking at turf fields and athletic complex for our student athletes. You can see under safety and security, we don't have any items for the capital plan for next year. And for some equipment, we're looking at updating the stage here at the high school with modern LED stage lighting, control system, and this is about $43,000. We can look at potentially breaking this out over 1 or 2 years if we wanted to, but the ask was for the items you see listed. And last but not least, there is one server that needed to be replaced and updated, and some arrow hives, which provide Wi-Fi to classrooms and spaces in the buildings for a total of another $88,000. Which brings us to the $1.5 million.
And what is the balance in E&D right now?
Is about between 1.2 and 1.3 million. They would have been using probably just $7,000, so it's probably in the 700,000 range
Okay.
for ED. I'm sorry, I have everything.
Oh, no, don't worry about it.
It's all budget all the time.
So EMD stands for access and deficiencies. And one of the reasons it's there is for regional schools, if they, in the middle of the year, end up having an additional cost come to them, this is something that we can look at under certain guidelines to help fund it instead of having to go back to the 3 towns to make them have a town meeting. Even though we have $750,000 or so in there, that doesn't mean that we should approach $750,000 worth of funding for the capital plan from EMD.
And actually, in prior year discussions, we sort of agreed on a percentage of the balance to use, and that was,
We agreed on using the excess that we collected in revenues and the budget that we didn't spend. That was kind of the amount that, because that's what we returning back each year to E&D.
mm-hmm,
And that was kind of how we were looking at it. So what were those, the excess revenue and the amount of budget that we didn't spend, that would go to E&D? And that's kind of what we use as an estimator for the capital fund.
okay.
It's been hanging around 600, depending on what our surplus is
Mhm.
written out as, but yeah, if we use 600 on this, reserve 150 or 200 in the bank, so to speak, we're cutting this in half, and I'm stumped on that one.
Yeah,
There's a lot to cut out of this. But we do usually put technology in the operating, so I'm not sure if we need to slide that over, that 88, because every year we have laptops, we have servers, we have AirHives, we have wiring, we have whatever. I think we've done that the last, is it 1 or 2 years? We put that in the operations. So a little something.
So Chris, are you going to make the recommendation that we move any technology from the capital plan into operating?
Yeah, I think on those particular items, yeah, they're recurring to me because the useful life of them is somewhere, I think, between 5 and 7 years.
Keep a running tally of
Yep.
as we start to take.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing I see. And then the turf field 250 placeholder, I think we should discuss that rather than just yank it, but we don't need that money, obviously, it was a placeholder.
Before we yank the full 250,
Yeah.
I just want to remind you and the committee that we were told that potentially some of that needed for some site work or some survey work that
Yeah.
needed to be done prior.
Yeah, we need to figure out, I think we did a plan with Martha, was it winter of 19, December 19, was it? Right
it that
before
long ago?
COVID, and it got
Oh,
shelved
yeah.
for 3
Yep,
years
yep.
now almost.
Wow.
So we had options laid out, I think it's what we got, I'll call our most recent estimates from 3 years ago. But they didn't really do any site work like we need to do with the tennis courts to make sure there was nothing under there was no sewer or anything like that. We're going to be with the tennis courts now, but we do need to do that kind of planning to make sure that if we want to put a turf field, we're not covering something up that shouldn't be covered.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to do that level of planning this far out from get that falling on?
Personally, I think it's premature because I think the admin building needs to get cited and figured out. I think
Yeah.
that's more urgent, but that's just
Yeah.
my personal take on the committee.
I don't disagree with that mindset myself either.
Is the consensus of the committee to take that 250 off of the capital plan?
For this year,
Okay.
yeah.
I might say the scoreboard go with it. Only because I've said this before, I don't want to put a new scoreboard up and then 4 years and then I take it all down. I hate to see what it is fall apart, but I wait to put a brand new scoreboard up, I'm gonna have to take it down and reassemble it and risk any problems. But Martha's looked into that in terms of, like she says on the margin, if you have the list, trying to get sponsorships and so forth. I don't know if we've gotten quite to the point of having enough to make that work, but it is something she's absolutely pursuing with some energy.
So good work so far, we're down to 1.3.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
I have a question
Thank you.
about the track. I'm not set foot on that track. Is it really in deplorable condition? Because it says in red here that it's 600,000 or 660 to replace the 200 to maintain, and it's going to need major work in 7 to 10 years. I just, same like with the admin building, I'm apprehensive to just dump money into something we're going to rip down.
Yeah, I don't think it's in disrepair at this point. The 7 to 10 there, I don't know if that was adjusted from 2 years ago when it was 7 to 10. So I know we're getting closer. I'm happy to follow up with Martha and see if there's anything like the tennis courts. I don't think it is yet a safety concern, but I haven't been out there in 6 months.
Okay.
Anyone on Winter Track know how bad it is?
I mean, it's more thin, but I think
Yeah.
it'll last a bit long, especially if you're like looking at it.
Yeah, I think the resurfacing issue, not a
If
replace.
it's not a complex, like definitely in a couple of years, but it's okay for now, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not like an arboretum like Village Arboretum's track is, which is just gotta grow trees and stuff.
Oh.
That was a tennis court. We didn't mow the tennis court.
My mind always goes to safety in a lot of these, and the overhead doors in the CTE wing. That's a big number, but if the doors are dangerous, if they're old and they really need to be replaced, I would be reluctant to take that item off.
I agree with you. I think it's been there for a couple of years.
Right.
That we've gotten a heads up that they're not in the best of repair.
I agree, the safety's an issue, students and staff, and also this probably affects the operating budget, but if they're not insulated, then we're bleeding heat, and that's adding to our heating bill.
Mm-hmm.
So it might not affect us directly, but indirectly.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
Do you have any insight on the doors?
I do. So for example, automotive doors, so gears, right, are very tiny. And so that's what causes like the delay in opening and closing them, but they're also very old. And so that grinding, right, this is laughing at you, but the grinding action of the gears will continue to wear down. And the concern is we don't want these giant heavy steel doors to hurt somebody.
Grinding's not good.
Yeah. In the further
That's
part.
the layman's way, at least.
Thank you, Principal Yell. When Lucas and I went on our tour of the shops, we had dinner. This also mentions it replaces the doors. So every one of our shops has an entry point, potentially to the outside world, to inside our school building. So all of these doors would be with a window on them.
Mm-hmm.
We could put a key fob on them, and we could bring them up to the same level that we have our front doors here.
Mhm.
So it's a safety concern from that perspective as well.
Yeah, that's actually very important.
So the thing that really jumps out at me when I'm looking at the big number, one is that $300,000 for those two big, huge HVAC units that we need to replace. I don't know if we have any time on those. I don't know what the situation is exactly with, could they go mid-year? And we end up paying $200, $225 to just replace one because we delayed the repair, or if we can eke any more time out of them. Based on the conversations we were having, it sounded like this was a time-sensitive project. $300,000 project is something we really need to lean into a little bit more and see if it's this year or if it could be delayed.
Mm.
Did we get a capital plan question on that?
We did.
That was December's, I'm guessing?
That's where it should be.
I'm looking for it.
I remember the doors and the stage lighting being that.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe Mentor, he submitted it after we had a gas smell a few months ago. And everything was okay, it was fixed, but I think we are on borrowed time. And I think it's something to do with how to replace the aged.
Thank you for refreshing my memory. I seem to have the feeling that he indicated we could end up with a very large bill mid-year that we had not budgeted for if we didn't take care of these.
That's a big nut that takes a good portion out of the rest of the capital budget.
I know it does. But remember when we had the hot water heaters going
Yeah.
here, and that was like 60, 70,000, and we freaked out. And that's when we got a $200,000 bill mid-year that was unbudgeted for.
Yeah, I don't know, they did have issues though, recently.
Yes.
Who's the plans in Rebecca's folder?
Oh, thank you.
safer. November 10th.
So if we fund the HVAC and the CTE doors, we're up to 481, is it?
Yeah, if you're building up the budget, yes, I'm breaking it down.
Right.
We've stripped things out so far,
Yeah.
and we're still at $1,136,183. So from an average, of what we've done over the past several years, we're still about $500,000 higher than we should be.
How about we've been putting 200,000 into the envelope work each year. This is not ideal, but could we skip a year if we have to fund the HVAC? That might be a Matt question, I don't know.
So when do you need to have your final number for the capital plan for budgetary purposes?
Probably not before the next meeting.
It
Yeah,
doesn't really flow through our budget, so it just kind of goes to the town and article.
Yeah.
It goes to the
No.
town as an piece of information.
Sorry.
yeah, like a footnote to the,
But if we're gonna try and use the new stabilization fund at all,
Oh.
don't we have to kind of have a number figured out, or at least some of the projects maybe figured out?
If we wanted to use stabilization fund, we committed to, we haven't funded that yet, though.
But like we budget through this year's budget.
If we can get it low enough.
But that's what I'm saying, I want to make sure we're all here together right now. I know this is a little tedious, I just don't want us to push it to the next meeting without thinking of all the contingencies.
oh, I'm not suggesting like stopping the discussion, but,
Mark, all that, it's just, you know, we do have some time.
mhm.
That time's pretty precious.
Carl?
Just one quick comment. We've tried to tell the towns in the recent years that the school can't continue to self-finance all of their capital needs. So you might want to consider a warrant article for the $300K for the HVAC units, town meetings.
It's another option.
I think about something else.
Project to explain.
I think so.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say this, but in Kingston at least, free cash is fairly solid right now.
So we're gonna circle back with Matt on the building envelope, which is $200,000 right now. We'll definitely double back with Matt and make sure that our assumptions about the HVAC units being right now project are true, especially if we're gonna put it for the towns as an article potentially. It sounds like the committee is fairly committed to the overhead door replacements. Just trying to be equitable to our diverse student population, looking at the equipment for the stage, which is utilized by drama, band, presentations, award ceremonies. It's not a big ask, the $43,883.
Yeah, to compare, sorry, as a user drama parent myself, compared to the money that we're considering for athletics. And there are safety issues around performing arts as well. This doesn't seem like a huge ask at all.
I think overall, we don't usually see too much coming from that realm of our student professional staff. So I think that we need to respect that number as a committee.
The HVAC as an article, just a quick comment. we may want to do something different because we had to do HVAC with the ARPA funds. And there might be some confusion that why aren't they one and the same? We fixed HVAC with ARPA last year. Why is this now coming up sequentially?
Did we actually get that done?
We haven't got it done, I don't think, but we got the funding.
Do we have the funding from all 3 towns?
We got the approval. I
Yeah.
believe, Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where it stands project-wise.
Are you talking, speaking of the air conditioning?
Yeah.
I think they're still in discussions. We've actually had, all the work here has been done, and I think it's been brought to the town in some way. I'm just not sure to what extent it's been brought to each town. I think Halifax's hesitancy was because, there's a person there, because there was not a new town administrator in place, and I think but I think when Imagine speaks to the town hall, there was nothing contrary to what we heard originally about the
Yeah.
project.
Yes, that's
That's
true.
only my point in terms of going for
There's a
another
commitment from all 3
line
towns.
item thing that we request. We just did a pretty large one last year.
Mm.
Maybe pivot to something else this year, just to show face. Oh, presentation sometimes. I'll like to stab at the list here. I'll do the opposite of what Jason's doing, instead of subtracting. I'll just go with whatever, I have 7 items here and total it up. So with that safety idea, I have no problem with 18,000 for flooring or the $20,000 for plumbing at the admin building. I think the 200 is very useful for the envelope portion. And we've been pretty good with keeping that in line. I don't want to risk very large buildings and large assets. The bathrooms have been around for several years. I think it's an old design problem. We actually know venting. So I'd like to keep that 35 in. The 44 as well for the stage. And then the 2 CTE projects are the electrical panel and the door. So those are really, I think, almost everything I got there. Safety is the big thing. I come up with about a 550 number. I don't feel too uncomfortable with relative to 750 or so of available max funding. Obviously, other things can come into play. People want to do the fields. It's another 60. It's just some of these things are just going to push a little further down. You know, duct cleaning's not on there. We'll put it on for 580. When we're getting tight, we have a problem. Like we wouldn't be able to afford an HVAC unit if we don't give ourselves the buffer.
Maybe we'll get a cleaning of a ductwork with the purchase of $300,000.
Maybe.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, actually.
So it keeps us under 600, I think, with or without the duct cleaning. Not that I don't think it's important.
And your first 18 was the
The
flooring?
yeah.
Right,
You
okay.
know how bad those tiles are.
Yeah.
I missed one of what you said, Chris, after the doors, what was the last thing you said?
The electrical panel,
For the-
$50,000 for
for the-
CTE. Yeah, that 40-year-old electrical. We have some high voltage equipment in there. I don't want it short and break one of those things, that's for sure.
Just had an update from that. These are all coming back to me. These are the rooftop units that are failing. Jill, if you remember, at the end of the summer, it didn't work at all. So the company came in, they kind of finagled some things, welded some parts, but they said that there's no replacement parts, there's no fixing it, there's only replacing it. So it's separate from installing AC. But they are needed replacements.
Yeah, I remember him saying, like, if we didn't take care of it, like a single unit might cost almost $300,000 a year as an emergency project. So,
Yeah.
unless there's any objection to what Chris just mentioned, we can bring back his idea to the Safer Subcommittee and try and get Matt to join us for that and really nail this down for our next meeting.
Mhm.
And potentially come up with some language that could be used for an article for some of these items. And Chris, I understand what you're saying about the air handlers, and we're already going to them with the ARPA, but
Yeah,
it seems like it might be the cleanest one to go at.
I agree. You need a bundle of
Just
small
if we
things to
tell
go
the
big.
story well and explain the need and the safety issues with it.
Wow.
I think we also need to consider, I know in Kingston, they'll rec department did a really good job pushing their project to people in the town and getting people to come out and support it. You know, just talking up the importance of the HVAC.
Just to kind of comment on what you said earlier about, Chris, about presenting the project to the town, like, sequentially. I just, again, I'm not a super huge fan of dumping money into that admin building and then coming back next year and saying, we need to rip the whole thing down and replace it. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
I get the need for it, I fully understand that, and I know the building is like super antiquated. But again, I just don't feel like we should be dumping $40,000 into a building and then turning around, coming to towns and saying we need $2 million for a whole new building, or how much it's gonna cost.
I don't disagree with that at all. I just think the admin building's a 3, 4, 5 year down the road thing, just because of funding, for one, and
Yeah.
we don't even know who owns the project.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it's cloudy, I'll say
Well,
that.
then maybe at our joint meeting, we should like really have like very serious conversation about the timeline and what the potential cost is gonna be.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that's shared costs, so we could remove it, say, hey, we can't fund it anymore, but I don't feel leaving the admin building without plumbing is fair.
Yeah.
I concur.
Thank you. I was looking for a nod from someone on that side.
We appreciate that.
yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you, the admin building is a can that's been kicked down the road since I've been on this committee. And I've been on, 15 years or so now. We can't keep ignoring it. So I agree. I think a joint discussion about it really should, a very, serious joint discussion about it makes sense.
And maybe after that, we decide that this is like a more urgent need than, and we go to the towns and say, hey, listen,
Yeah.
we either keep putting 20 here, 20 there, 20 here, 20 there, or we just bite the bullet.
I mean, it's not even handicap
Yeah.
accessible, and that could be a big issue for us. Overnight, that could be a big issue for us. Okay, so I think we're comfortable.
We will establish a date to meet prior to our next meeting.
Okay. Alrighty, folks. Okay, so moving on, subrate.
So I'd like to ask the committee to consider increasing the substitute teacher rate from $95 a day to $107 a day. I had asked Dave Turcott to look at the rates in our schools in terms of length of day and hourly rates. And as you know, minimum wage was raised on January 1st to $15 an hour. I'm asking the committee to please consider raising the substitute teaching rate to $107 to make it more competitive with area substitute teacher rates. And this would bring our substitute teacher rate to $16.04 per hour. And some of our committees have already voted to raise the rate to $107, and some of them have done it all of them have done it retroactively to make sure that they weren't violating the minimum wage law on January 1st.
Okay, I make a motion that we raise the substitute rate to $107 a day.
One second.
All right, any further discussion on that? Okay, sure. Oh, are you voting, or?
Would you consider adding retroactive?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, you meant it.
Amended to be retroactive to the beginning of the new year.
Calendar.
Good catch.
Okay. All righty, any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, principals' reports.
I don't have anything official to bring to you today, but I do want to tell you that Sandy Brayton had a wonderful send-off before break. We had a half day, and the high school students, Mr. Lay, the band from the high school, the chorus from the high school, the chorus from the middle school, all sang and played her into her retirement. And it was a lovely culmination and collaboration. So thank you, Michaela, for sharing your people.
My people are
Okay,
That's all I have.
that's it? Wow, thank you.
I have a little bit more.
We suspected.
I want to welcome Madden Joyce, who's our student representative, and she'd like to take a few minutes to share something. The swap places, if you know that. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good team.
Hi, I'm a sophomore here. I just want to start with a recent event. So in September, we had Spirit Week and Homecoming. There was a lot of participation there. We had over 75% of students participate for the week. In November, there was female flag football, and we did like Toast for Tots drive there, and there was very good amount of donations. And we also did Labor Day, which brought up a lot of school spirit. We started the day in homerooms while we played school bingo, and then the juniors and freshmen went into the auditorium, while the sophomores and seniors went into the gym to watch student volunteers in a hypnotist chat. And then there was a pep rally, and I feel like there's great energy, and everyone in the gym was very excited and involved. In December, we had a second Labor Day, kind of, but it was just like a student conference basketball game, and then there was a canned food drive for that. So, and then in January, with upcoming January 28th, there was bocce at Pembroke High School, the Special Olympics, and Stuco and Best Buddies will work together on that. For student council, we attended leadership conferences. We attended Officer Shop at Middleborough High School and CMASC at Marshall High School. We had 22 students attend that, and Mr. Pino was our keynote speaker. Upcoming CMASC is at Duxbury High School, the winter conference on February 2nd, and MASC State Conference is in Hyannis from March 8th to 10th. Overall school spirit, during COVID it went down more recently. School spirit and getting better. It's higher now than it was pre-COVID. The environment, I do believe the environment so relatively welcoming and engaging. However, like with recent events, all the students are so good and very happy that they lost their classmate time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our student council has done a wonderful job of revitalizing our school spirit here since March of 2020. It's a hard task, but it's a great team. They've done a really good job of bringing back a little pep to our step here.
It's so important.
Kudos to them.
Yeah.
In the shared drive, I have a copy of the parent letter that we sent out to current 8th graders, and then a little infographic that can go on their fridge, some upcoming save the dates for our different events that we host for both parents and students leading into freshman year. And I'm sharing with the committee, recall last year you had mentioned trying to highlight what we do and something that we can maybe share with families who are currently enrolled in charter schools or homeschool. So I want to share that with you for your review to see if that is something that might be worth sharing with those families.
Is this the class of 2027 welcome letter?
Yes, so it's 6B.
Yep, I got it.
There's a little infographic that says save the dates, and then there's a letter that accompanies it. You can certainly adjust the letter a little bit, but I think the save the date really highlights different things that we are doing and might encourage some families to come in, perhaps to our CTE open house or our curriculum night. Maybe put a spotlight on the great things that we do here at Silver Lake.
Michaela, are you looking for feedback on this letter? Or,
Not so much the letter, but the infographic. The letter's gone out, like that goes to our
okay. All right. So,
is the info, is that what you're looking for in terms of sending to families of students who may not currently attend Silver Lake schools but are in district? That.
do you have this?
So, one comment about that, if you're talking about people who are
Save
not
the
in
date.
district, this looks like it's really targeted at the current 8th graders. Would you want to expand that to maybe kids who are a little older, who might want to come back to high school?
For the infographic?
Yeah.
We can make it, yeah, we can maybe take class of 2027 off of there.
Yeah, and I think that would kind of
Easy enough. But does that meet the, is that what you're looking for? Is this the direction
Ironically,
you were
or
going?
not, I got the letter the same day I got this sort of pitch letter from Rising Tide as well. So
Timing's everything.
it was amazingly timed. So and I was like, I'd like to thank you both for reminding me that my youngest is about to start high school.
I will also say, as a parent of a non-middle schooler, I also got stuff from Rising Tide. So they're not just targeting it as that prospective freshmen. So,
And what did they send?
It's kind of a letter plus some graphics that are like, here are all the things that you can get at Rising Tide. I mean, it's a little bit like getting a college brochure for your college eligible kids.
And it has like their open house date on it, there's some pictures.
My only other comment is, in my mind, I kind of think about, over the years, what some of our great successes and draws are. And, one of them, our music program, we've sent kids on to, very high-level contests. We've had a lot of success there. Our students have. We have a wonderful program. I don't know if some of those highlights, we've had our students compete at state and national levels for different things. They're successes. This school,
What if we did like a trifold?
Yep.
One of the big things, right? We do sort of the save the dates, but make it less specific to one class and more open to anyone who lives in the district. We can do like school highlights, right? Athletics, extracurriculars, music. We can do maybe some of our like a small little highlight of like program studies, offerings. Right. Go back to the drawing board.
But I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Just, I would expand on it, because we have a lot of really positive things for people to know and make their decisions based on that.
My next question is, how do we know to send this to?
Yeah.
We have the right by law to request the enrollment information of all the charter schools who draw from us through a third-party mailing house, and then send our information along to those addresses. I'm sure there's costs associated with that, but it is our right, just like they have the right, the way they got all of our addresses, was the same methodology and same statute that we apply.
And then on the educational channel, or government channel, probably educational channel on Comcast, is it something that could be just sort of floated there, as some sort of, post shown periodically? Yeah.
I would just suggest that we check with council to make sure that we're not overstepping advertising versus like marketing. We're allowed to promote ourselves, but not advertise ourselves as a public entity. So I just have to check in.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that also hold true, charter schools also public entities technically?
Like I said,
Well,
I
you
would
don't
check
see
in
them on
with
TV,
council
Yeah.
just to make sure where that line is.
Yeah.
So we have at least his opinion before we proceed.
I'm calling Lori for some input. She's smirking over here, I think.
Yep.
Have a thought?
I've lived every day that school choice road for Berkshire's. People go billboards and.
Boy.
Yeah, it never hurts to check with Russ.
Yes.
You- Ah! He's great, actually. Really great. Okay.
All right, I will plan to follow up with our attorney, and maybe he can help with how we get
The billboard.
as well, and then I will.
And
I love the way what you made came up. I thought it was fantastic as it is. I understand like the desires and the additional pieces of information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, doesn't mean you have to have just one thing that's right. You could hit it in multiple different angles. And I think what you put together so far is eye-catching, informative. Like,
Yeah.
felt pretty proud when I looked at it.
And kudos to Mrs. Mathias, who's my Canva queen. I have a vision and then she executes it for me.
Are we most concerned about losing 8th graders to freshman year? Or 6 to 7, or is it?
I would
I'm just
say,
curious.
in my experience, I've seen the last couple of years, we do see a big drop from 8th grade to 9th grade. That's where we start to see a lot of private
That's perfect.
schools.
Yeah,
That makes it target
that's an
then.
interesting point, too. Yeah,
One sophomore, it's not worth making an effort for.
right, right.
All right.
How about a magnetic sign we could put on the side of your car as you're driving around?
The new license plate, #1 leader. Do all sorts of fun things.
We're on a roll.
All right. Thank you for that feedback. That's helpful. I do have 3 out-of-state field trip requests for you tonight. The first is for our CG carpentry program. They're looking to go to the Rhode Island Convention Center in Providence on March 24th to attend the JLC Live Conference. This is New England's largest residential construction conference. Students would be able to attend building clinics, exhibits, and demonstrations by industry professionals and business leaders. We've attended this previously, but like many things, not since 2020. So we're looking to get this back as an annual trip for our students in carpentry. Do you want me to present all 3 then? Great. Our varsity girls basketball team is requesting an out-of-state field trip also to Providence, Rhode Island to attend a Providence College basketball game on January 21st. The school would provide transportation, coaches would chaperone, and tickets would be donated, so I guess this is a 2 for request, by their assistant coach, Rick Dunphy, who's a Providence College alumni. The coach is hoping that exposure to a Division I game would help demonstrate what they are focusing on in practice, higher level skills, energy on the bench, and other tangibles that go beyond technical skills, not to mention it would be a great team bonding event. And third request, we have 2 students, Connor Whittemore and Thea Madsen, who have been accepted to the All Eastern Music Festival, which takes place in Rochester, New York, April 13th to 16th. With a performance at the Kodak Hall at Easton Theater. Our music staff would be the chaperones, the school bands provide transportation. The cost would be split between our program sponsors, and the families would be able to pay the other half. But obviously, if they needed support, we can help them too.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the request of Michaela for the 3 out-of-state field trips.
And the donation of the ticket.
And the donation of the tickets. Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. They're excited. Donation request this evening. We had a visit by Tak Toyoshima, who is a visiting illustrator who attended Ms. McGuire's art class. As part of his presentation, he also wanted to donate a signed copy and self-portrait of his work to our library.
Oh.
I'll make a motion to accept the gift.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Perfect, thanks.
Again. And then lastly, some program of studies updates. There's a more descriptive handout for you in the drive. It's titled SLRHS Program Studies. 2 minor proposals this year. One is to adjust our sociology course, which currently is a full year course. We'd like to reduce it to a semester-long course. And then on the back side of that, we would like to be able to offer a new course, which would be criminal justice. Neither of these changes would require staffing or funding. We provide another elective opportunity for students in our social studies department.
How are you managing it without funding?
So essentially, the teacher who instead of teaching a full year of sociology would have 1 semester of sociology, 1 semester of criminal justice. Really been able to get away from textbooks for a lot of our classes and sort of supplement support resources and things we have access to.
Is this, oh, I'm sorry. Is this our first time offering criminal justice? Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. There's been a lot of student interest in taking it, so I think it would be pretty popular.
Summer?
Just for clarification, so when a student chooses sociology as an elective now, they choose it as a full year elective. So does that count? I don't know how it works, but only like one elective requirement, whereas this is now being an opportunity to have 2 elective requirements?
So they would still have, it gives them the option to take more than just sociology. So in the history department, in the history side of things, they have to have 3 years, right, which is typically your modern world history, US 1 and US 2. Those are your requirements for graduation. So anything beyond that are electives that they can choose to take. So it just expands our elective offerings. Ms. Schweer, who had taught sociology here for years, she graduated. She retired. And so the course, we're looking to make some changes and have some more modern offerings in our department now. This is an opportunity with our current social studies staff to be able to provide something that our students have been asking for a couple of years.
Okay. Any further thoughts on that? We need a motion, right? Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the change to the curriculum. Do I need any specific language to do that?
That works.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we move on from Michelle, may I say something?
Sure.
I just want to thank you and your administrative team for everything that you guys did to support our students in the really difficult time that they have all been going through. And it really was a very beautiful showing of how we have such a blessed community and sense of community in this district. And I mean, everything from the students who were given transportation to participate and what you guys did in school when the kids returned, it just, the performance of the students at the service, just everything was beyond anything I could have expected from our community. It was really beautiful. So thank you to everyone who made that happen.
Thank you.
5 to 5.
Thank you, Summer. That was very well put. Silver Lake definitely has a heartbeat. It definitely has always had a heartbeat.
This has certainly been, our hearts are broken, and we're overwhelmed, right? But I think you look for those moments of joy in between, and it's our community who has just been so supportive. Our colleagues at other schools who have really, reached out to help us as well. Just a testament to the place that we live and the school that we have and the community that supports us. So.
And the way the students know it, watching kids who were clearly of different groups, friends, and they all just came together. It was just amazing, amazing. Christine should really dry it all out now.
I will do my best. But I do concur with everything you said, but he sent Paul, just everything was like the right touch of keeping people informed and reminding us of all of this together and how we continue to move forward with the whole thing. So it was just such a very balanced and everything. So, in your electronic drive, I struggled to find the right term, but thank you, I think we have that tonight. The financial is in there, and I just wanted to briefly go over that before we get to the fund budget information. there are just a handful of deficits that are happening throughout our financial. Let's see, one of the things I wanted to mention is on page 2 of the financial, we talked about in the principal's office, the dues. This is at the high school. And the graduation account, both of those, we had enough information to prepare for our FY24 budget. One of the things with graduation is that we notice the deficits at the end of the year, but that's after we've already budgeted. So this year we talked about it covering everything we know about that we can quantify, so we see what that true cost is, so we can maybe take care of that as we move forward. And we did do that. And then, let's see, on the top of page 4, we have a deficit of about $36,000 for contracted services, athletic services. And that's because of the switch that was made from having the athletic trainer as a staff member to a contracted services. And I believe this is a situation that's working out a little better. So you'll see there will be a surplus at the end of the year in the staff line, but there will be a deficit this side, so the two will offset one another. Let's see, I can get down to the insurance area of the financial, which is on page 5, near the top of the page. There is a deficit in the insurance property and casualty. I've mentioned that since the beginning of the year. I know it's not a huge amount, but when I budget all the insurance accounts together, and sometimes the balance is a little off, and that's one of the areas, but it seems to be more related to the discounts that are provided by our insurance company. If we make a once-a-year payment, we get a discount. Those discounts are shrinking. So it's more about the shrinking discounts versus the increase in the premiums. So I tried to build that into next year's budget. And then on the last page, under psychological services, contracted services, we have a deficit there of $8,000. And that's because we have struggled to fill a staff position at the high school, the guidance area, and that we have had to contract for some of these services. So there will again be a surplus in the staff line for the deficit in this line.
Mhm.
And then the last one is transportation and special education. And we are still struggling with the cost and find for vendors. We seem to be able to fill all of our needs and routes at the time being. Then maybe not with the vendor that would provide us with the most financial opportunity, but we're doing the best we can to move our students where they need to be, and that's where we are right now. The rest of the budget is doing pretty well, and we continue to monitor to see if there's anything we need to be aware of and make changes accordingly as we need to. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Make the motion to accept Christine's financial report.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. At your spots, you'll find 2 audit reports. So 2 meetings ago, Grady reported to us from Richmond and Associates for the audit, that the successful audit that we had completed. So there's actual copy of that there. That's pretty much everything that Grady did speak about. And I also included the single audit, which is for any federal grants. So that is also included. That's a smaller package that you have. And you will see that we were cited there for our procurement policy not being in alignment with the federal guidelines. And our procurement policy was 2 pages maybe. Well, now it's 75 pages, so we updated it. So we have met the standard, and we did receive a letter from Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that we have met the requirements. So that has been taken care of. So I just did want to mention that that's what you would see in the reports.
And who understands the 75 pages?
I got to read it all. It's very, very detail oriented, and it's to make sure that we check all the boxes. And the audit requirement for that is maybe 60 different topics that you have to cover. And in Massachusetts, our guidelines are more strict than the federal guidelines, so we always adhere to that, but that doesn't meet the standard. You have to still speak to the federal requirements. So we have met that threshold, so that citing will not be there for next year.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. I just have a quick curriculum instruction and assessment update. Inside of your electronic drive, you'll find just a memo that provides an overview of our student survey that we had started last year to check in on students' learning needs, as well as the progress with our social emotional learning curriculum. That's something that we're launching at the middle school in grades 7 and 8. But this survey will work 6 through 12 to sort of be another check-in for teachers on students' needs, and to see how students are doing in areas of self-efficacy, growth mindset, grit, self-management, social awareness, Next week, all parents will receive a memo very similar to this. It'll just be a parent square. They'll provide a link to all the questions that we ask, and it will provide a period of time for parents to ask questions or to opt out their students, should they wish to. Our plan is to administer the survey the week before February break. We'll utilize a midday advisory schedule at the high school. The middle school is developing the best time to survey students. It takes about 25 minutes. Teachers, the information that teachers get back, I included this simple graphic. It might say something like 23% of the students in your class have reported a strength in the SEL topic, throughout the course of the year, and it provides those shaded breakdowns just so you could get a sense of the data teachers would see about their students, and also our support teams would have access to the data. That's that small group of teachers and staff that Jill referenced earlier that just make sure students' learning needs are met and can propose and track interventions if needed. So that's just an overview of the student survey that we'll continue to use this year.
Okay. Any questions on that? No? All righty. You're all set then?
All set, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Prue?
So in your electronic drive, you will find a PowerPoint presentation for this year's preliminary budget, FY24, and you will also find a budget summary along with budget details that corresponds with this presentation. So I'd like to start that, but I'd also like to enlist the support of Principal Coette and Principal Gill when we get to specific details that involve their schools. So as you know, in the fall, we always ask our building principals to work with their staff to develop a budget based on the needs of their students and programs. And we also work with our curriculum coordinators, our special education director, and our technology director, Steve Pello, to help influence and provide us with input as to what should be included for each of the schools in those areas as well. And you'll recall the presentations from Marie and Steve at our last joint meeting. So those numbers are included in this preliminary budget. Our goals always are to support our students' needs both academically and developmentally. We always strive to maintain class sizes and structures necessary for effective instruction. We like to consider and respond to the fiscal conditions of the towns that we represent. And we also continually want to make sure that the budget reflects and helps to support our strategy for district improvement. So in your packet, you will find a preliminary budget. The total budget is an increase of 3.78%, an increase of $1,068,915 more than last year. Special education transportation is a 14.29% increase of $32,735. Payroll and benefits are 2% of the $283,356 budget. Health insurance is estimated at 5%, and each percent is $28,383. It does include placeholders for 2.5 retirements at the high school. The 0.5 is a mid-year retirement, so that's how we've decided to capture that, try to capture that. The substitutes that Christine, after we get all the input from the principals and from the coordinators and the directors, Christine then goes in and makes sure she transfers all of the salaries, but in addition to that, she looks at the utilities and other costs and looks at averages for certain areas. Substitutes in here are at the FY23 levels, and the utilities have been updated to reflect our costs associated with the most recent trends. The shared cost items do not include any potential changes, so any shared cost changes would be presented at the joint meeting in February. So that's important to realize. Technology hardware items, as we talked about earlier today, you'll notice how we moved some hardware items from the capital plan in FY23, and we'll also be moving additional items in there that was discussed earlier tonight. Those items that we discussed tonight are not in this preliminary budget. You'll also notice that allied health teacher is now fully in this preliminary budget, and Principal Gill will speak to that. And homeless transportation is based on a 12-year average. So I'm now going to turn it over to Principal Gill, who will highlight some notable increases and decreases in her budget requests.
Thank you. So on the next slide, as Christine just noted, there's been a significant rise in rental costs associated with everything that we need for our graduation ceremony. So we wanted to make sure that we included that in our budget for next year. So that will look like a substantial increase. The reality is we've been spending it anyway every year, but this way we can plan for it. The principal supply line will also look like a significant increase, $20,000, and that is to support our freshman orientation. In the past, we've been piecemealing it, so we've sort of used like our professional development line to support the staff who come in over the summer to run it. You know, we have a lot of organizations that help with food and t-shirts and whatnot, but then we would use like supply lines to get incidentals and whatnot. So we wanted to have it all in one spot where I think it's more appropriate versus professional development. Student development, but it's not necessarily staff development. Our guidance office is another line that you'll see a pretty significant increase, especially since I think it's been the same request every year for the last 5 years to cover mailing transcripts. But this year we do need to account for translation, interpretation, and communication services for our families who require interpretation, whether it's for a different language, or we also need to make sure that we can provide American Sign Language interpreters at all of our events and parent conferences and any presentations that we do for our families. Transportation, not surprisingly, also going up in part due, again, to rising costs to rent buses and pay for transportation in addition to fuel. And then again, our music trips have really been on hold since March of 2020, but we're excited to be able to have those back again. But we do need to be able to support that. Again, like Christine said, in athletics, you'll see a giant jump in contracted services, but that again is because instead of our athletic trainer coming out of the salary line, it's now going to come out of our contracted services line, so it's no more or less, it's just moving the line. And there is a little bit of a price increase with our hockey ice. The facility that we use is under new ownership. Their prices are through the roof. If anybody's looking to make some money, I would recommend building your own rink somewhere near the high school. And you'll be golden. You can retire early.
There's one next to the pool on the roof, right?
Yes, with right next to our new turf fields. In terms of cost with acquisition of new equipment or replacement of equipment, we do need to update our kiln. We're looking to install a digital controller just to improve access for our kids and for our teachers in using those, making them safer as well. And then a modular computer for our wellness classes. We don't currently have, when I say modular computer, right, so it looks like we used to have one here. It's around the corner. Right, so that our wellness classes, those teachers also have access to a computer for the class, right? We have no means right now to do any sort of presentations. Those classes, unfortunately, don't get our announcements in the morning because we are so digital these days. So in order to make it more equitable, but also give those teachers the same access that, say, a Spanish or a math teacher would have. And then in terms of replacement, our AEDs, we do need to maintain those per state law, so we have to replace a few, as well as we want to purchase a new one for our CTE wing. We want to be able to install some around campus, so that we're not just we're not sending someone back to the building to get one and then bring it out. So we would purchase some with weatherproof casing to be able to install around the grounds, by the track, by the fields. We're looking to replace our lifting cage, which is 20 years old at this point. At any point, you don't want the frame to bend. That would, again, create a huge safety concern.
I'm sorry, what is a lifting cage?
So in our weight room, it holds all the weights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then we're working with several booster groups so if we can replace the lifting cage, our booster groups can help us with the other components that need to be replaced, so, because they are used by our wellness classes and then also our athletes. We need to replace our digital cameras for our art program, as well as our digital piano, which is, I think, 15 or 16 years old and on its last key. And then our VEX robotics for our Project Lead the Way, we need to update the equipment so that we can remain current with the program standards and expectations so we can continue to receive our grant funding. And then our conference room furniture, we kind of lost our conference room over the years. You know, we're excited to add all these new programs with Pathways, which is over here. One of our conference room, the office conference room is now my office, right? We keep, as we add new programs and new staff, which is phenomenal, we run out of space to host professional meetings, conferences, training for staff. And so we are looking to outfit the room over here on the other side of the library. That would become our new conference room. But our current furniture really can only seat about 8 people, and even that, there's like 3 chairs that are usually wild ones to sit on. So if you're late to the meeting, you're generally out of luck. So staffing related, as Jill said, we do have 3 confirmed retirements. One of them is a mid-year retirement, so 2 will be at the end of this fiscal year, another one in December. I do anticipate needing to fill all of those retirements. And then allied health, the second allied health teaching position, we have been fortunate to have funded half of that salary through Perkins funding. But Desi is the expectation now is they've done it for 3 years. The reality is the expectation is we need to fully fund that position now because Perkins funding should really be used for to support students in other ways in our CTE program. So those are their biggest notable increases, if you will. Fortunately, our curriculum coordinators have done a lot to really scale back the number of textbook requests. We're using a lot of online resources. That's helpful with having Chromebooks. We have some replacement of textbooks that we do rely on that just need to be replaced, but that's far less expensive than buying all new books. So there's some savings there this year, as well as the tutoring services. Again, I do feel like we're on the other side now of March of 2020, and so while we will continue to tutor students as needed, there isn't as much of a need now that our students are fully in the building and attendance has improved quite a bit. And then testing materials, we do have a good amount still from the last 2 years that we've ordered that we don't need to order as many. This is for special ed testing. We don't feel like we need to order as many for next year, and so there's a little bit of savings there as well. On the next slide, I go into a little bit more detail about the allied health position, how it's been funded the last several years, and then the necessity of fully funding it in our salary line. And then the slide after that, again, just highlights some of the bigger things like our freshman orientation. As you know, we went from a 2-hour orientation to a 2-day orientation. And we have a few staff members here tonight, but I would say that that was a game changer for us in terms of helping our students with that transition from middle school to high school. Our fine arts classes and our wellness classes, the equipment that I'm looking to replace and update for them is necessary. To just promote and improve education for students in those programs. And then again, the contracted services for the athletic trainer is just moving to a different line, is not necessarily asking for more money.
Thank you. You can see that the next slide is a little bit thinner than Michaela's. I'm looking for a board level budget for supplies. We do have a couple copy machines, so every year we have copy machines that we try and order to keep up with the ones that are either breaking down or getting too old to find parts for or get replaced. So that's really one of our notable increases in that line. For teaching supplies, we really want to purchase PE equipment because it hasn't been replaced, especially these things in a good amount of time, but also PE materials that aren't just like the Amazon top, search item, but it's, for schools, for kids to really durable items that really help our kids not only use them, but, you know, we buy them once and it's a better quality. So that's what I'm looking to replace. And then we do have one of our classrooms, this happens to be Mr. Lay's classroom, who has music classes, but also teaches some technology classes, and a better projector system in there for him would be really appreciated, I think. There are no known retirements, my knowledge, and items of decrease would be contracted service, our AV equipment, we've been doing really well keeping up with that, and then conference funds. Mr. Lynch has really been helpful with other pockets of money to get with the professional development, so that was one of the areas that I was able to decrease. You'll see that I am requesting more staff than Michaela, but I can explain those to you. The 0.5 FTE adjustment counselor, I actually have a 0.5 currently, who's under the operating budget already, but this additional 0.5 would really fall into the revolving account, and I've asked the special education director for this to be funded, mostly because our students with social emotional exceptionalities don't have outbursts or need to be regulated half the time. Right, so it's hard to have that person work with those programs and then only be there half the time, and to pinpoint when those times might be needed has been a struggle, so that's why I'm asking for that position. In regards to the special educator position, many of you know that we have 3 teams. We believe in a team model at the middle school. There's 3 7th grade teams, there's 3 8th grade teams, and students move between a team instead of having such a large, you know, space to travel, and also many different teachers to kind of facilitate through right when they come from elementary school. 5 of our teams have a dedicated special education inclusion teacher. 1 of our teams do not. And I really think that, you know, those students still, of course, get serviced by a special educator, but they don't receive the same face time, and those special educators don't co-teach all the time with their teachers. So I would like to have a dedicated special education teacher for those kiddos as well. And then lastly, this is something we've been thinking about with the scheduling committee, and through multiple conversations just around how 7th grade electives have been run in the past. So students come from 6th grade, they usually get this list, which is in our program of studies, of what they can pick, right? They can pick art, music, technology, they can pick band or chorus, they can pick tech ed classes, but sometimes they don't really know what to pick because they haven't really been immersed in our school yet, and so they might only pick art and technology and never be exposed to music in middle school. And so I would really like to have an exploratory 7th grade program, right, where they would be exposed to every elective, and then be able to kind of choose them in a more solidified fashion in 8th grade. And in order to do this, especially, I can do it with most every elective, but with world language, right now we have students that may choose an exploratory 7th grade world language, but I don't have enough staff to then have every 8th grader opt into a world language. So it's just an area that I find to be thin for our school, and I would love for every 7th grader to be exposed to a language and then choose, right, to take one for a full year in middle school, which would then allow more students to take Spanish 5, per se, or some other language offering in high school. So you can see on the next slide that I just highlighted those because they connect to the SDI in regards to relationships, in regards to curriculum, and expectations, and improving learning.
So the 2 items that are not in this budget are the 2 staffing requests. If you recall, the first item is going to be will be out of the revolving account, so that's not actually, would not be in this budget. The second two items would total approximately $132,000, or 0.47% increase to the budget. So we wanted to give you that information as well for your consideration. So at this point, this is a preliminary budget for your review. We're happy to try to answer any questions you may have. We reviewed the capital plan priorities this evening, and we can go back to our SAFER group and make those, have those conversations and continue to those conversations in areas that we need to continue to look at. At this point, we look to you for direction in terms of what, if any, other information that you may need or any steps that you may want us to take before our next committee meeting.
Sure, go ahead.
Something that I think Halifax raised in the town was with the special education transportation budget. Our town has a couple of council on aging vans that don't get used a whole lot. Is there any possibility of using town vehicles, hiring our own drivers, being able to help mitigate some of those rising costs, or do we have certification problems with that, or?
I had asked some questions about that. I think one of the difficulties is the scheduling, because all the students had to be at school at a similar time, and then they may be at a greater distance. But I had asked about it. We haven't followed up on pursuing. Maybe there are some opportunities.
And it also has to be a 7D van.
Okay.
So that's another.
That's a reclining, yes.
Right.
Okay. That's, I had a feeling there was something about the quality of the vehicle and the certifications of the drivers and things like that. So,
Yeah, it's a special training as well. So it's not just the features of the van, but it's also the training that the driver
Yeah,
receives.
the driver is also 7D certified.
Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I just had a question for about the two full-time staffing positions that you're requesting. So I followed the special educator.
Yep.
Because you have 6 teams, 5
Yep.
full-time, got it, one more. Can you repeat, you said about the world language teachers, so I followed you when you were saying that you want to have like exploratory, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
I also think it's fantastic that the students have the ability to be exposed to a language earlier and get more advanced and going through high school. However, I got hung up on the part where you said it's thin because you don't have the ability for every 8th grader to take a foreign language.
Yeah.
But how many 8th graders can take a foreign language right now?
So, if I do the math quickly, so I have enough teachers right now that every 8th grader could take a French or Spanish class in this case, right? But then I have nobody to do the 7th grade exploratory. No kids would be exposed to an introduction or even,
Okay, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that every 8th grader is not taking the language.
Correct.
Okay.
But, I mean, that's something we would like to change and alter.
But are you going to make it a requirement?
I haven't worked that through. I don't think that that's always the best thing, but I also feel like when I took language, I learned English I understood English better, right? So I feel like we don't have the capacity to even give it to everyone that's asked for it right now. So that's my concern.
You feel like, or we don't have the capacity to give it to
We don't have the capacity, especially the 7th grade class coming up has 280 students, which is 30 more than the 8th grade class we currently have.
So how many 8th graders currently do you have to say, I'm sorry, you cannot take a foreign language this year?
I have to get back to you.
Okay.
But I can do that.
Okay.
A follow-up to that design thought is, how many of our middle schools on the South Shore don't offer foreign language at least in 8th grade? Never mind a full year of a language in 7th grade as well. I can tell you just from my own experience,
Most middle schools don't.
most middle schools offer language in 7th and 8th grade. A lot of kids now can start high school with at least 1 year and 2 years of language. And most of our contemporary districts on the South Shore.
So now we only offer 8th grade, thing? No, in seventh at all.
Well, we have the
We have an
exploratory.
elective origins of language, it's like an introductory
Yeah, my son took it, yeah.
class, but we don't offer language to seventh graders in that way.
Okay, so you're saying that most middle schools offer a language in seventh grade, and then they,
Yeah, and then in eighth grade, they take their second year. as opposed
And
to-
I'm just trying to lend to the alarm bell that Becky is very kindly putting out there gently, that we might not be able to even offer a single year of a foreign language to our eighth graders who desire to take a language would really put us at an extreme deficit towards our leader-like and community-like schools on the South Shore.
A related question, Becky, you mentioned French and Spanish.
Yeah.
Is Latin no longer a thing at the middle school? Has that gone away?
As far as, that's what I understand, I don't have more information because I wasn't here.
So
Un-
that's fairly reasonable.
Unfortunately, before I came, which was at least 5 years ago now, right? Five or six? How long have I been here?
20 years ago.
Latin at the middle school was discontinued. And then, since I've been here, our numbers continued to dwindle at the high school level to a point where it was no longer economically
Not sustainable.
sustainable, given the small numbers of students.
Can I switch gears for a moment and ask a question? How are you handling now being short one special ed teacher?
Yeah, so I just want to be clear, is we're not necessarily, every student that's on an IEP has a liaison, right?
Mhm.
They're generally assigned to teams.
Mhm.
So either they're going outside of that team to receive services, or that teacher is going to that team
Mhm.
to offer services to those students, and it's just not somebody who's stationed and moves with all of their teachers, right? It might be a student that just has a math goal, and then a
Mhm.
math-related special educator is working with that student in that pocket, instead of being on team all the time.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that answered my question.
That's my 8 o'clock words for
Go
And I
ahead.
have
Go.
about 92 students that couldn't get into language, whether they, I don't know, I would have to go back to the guidance counselor about how many of those students requested it, but I have 92 students right now in 8th grade that are not taking language.
Yeah, I'm just more curious about
150. I mean, 200.
whether or not they want to. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's
Yeah, so I'd
my,
have to go back to my guidance counselor's records.
okay.
I can do that for you.
I'm just curious.
Okay. Gordon?
So I'm probably gonna make folks uncomfortable, and I would appreciate understanding if I'm off base here. We had, I think, like peak enrollment in, say, call it 2013 of like, 1,800 students for the regional school district. We were at 1,700-ish in 2018. We're now at like 1,500-ish in 2022. And, at least in our present projections, we're not, it's at least for 2 to 3 years, it's not looking like big upticks. That's a 17% decrease. I don't think headcount has moved the same. And I hate to raise that, and I think that there are resources and things like that we've probably added or deployed as we've tried to be more sophisticated in dealing with counseling crises and other things like that. But I feel like that's got to be discussed. I feel like that has to be examined. I work for a university, and I see numbers all the time. I would not be able to sustain a 17% decrease over a given period of time without a commensurate adjustment where our headcount is. So if we're different for attrition, if we're different for all kinds of, I mean, if there are, you know, if there are things that we have added that we're getting like, I don't know, great results out of or something like that, I do not want to just say, all right, yeah, let's fill 17, go cut 17%. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, what does that history look like and how are we thinking about it? And, you know, are there, I mean, we just talked about Latin. Are there portions of our curriculum that are not used very heavily that we should look at phasing out?
So if I'm looking at the enrollment chart, I see 1,710 going from 2017 to 2022, which is 1528. That's approximately 182 students. If a teacher sees, a high school teacher, for example, sees 125 students, right, 25 students per class, 5 classes a day, we're looking at perhaps a, you know, 1 point something FTE for that number of classes that you would expect to see decline over those years, just mathematically. When I raised this question with Principal Gill, who's been here longer than I have been, she did explain that, because we also talked about the addition of additional offerings as well. She talked about the ways in which there are fewer students in study halls, and that there were some staffing decreases in the past that were not necessarily recovered.
Yeah, and again, I'd have to really dig up to get the actual figures for everyone. But from 2008 to about 2014, 15, I mean, we lost, between the middle school and high school, I want to say like 9 to 12 teachers, teaching positions. And so there were some hard economic times, and it seemed like with every retirement, we just didn't fill that position, right? It was, you know, we lost through attrition. And as class enrollment has gone down a little bit, we are finally now at a place where our class sizes are manageable, they are appropriate, they are where they should be, without, you know, adding in those 9 to 12 teachers we lost between the two schools.
Could you talk about appropriateness? Like, how are you defining appropriate size?
Defining, well,
Appropriate size or ratios?
so it's different in each department, right? CT has a very strict limitation of how many kids, so that's always going to be, you know, your 15-to-1 ratio. But our class sizes, you know, our average class sizes, and I can, again, I'd have to pull up the numbers for you. But as a social studies teacher, I mean, I had classes that were, there were 30 kids in my classes here. Now I would say the average for a, you know, high school requirement class is probably 25 to 28. Just as one example. We have our directed studies. If you go back, you know, before those cuts, or when those cuts first happened, we would have probably 4 or 5 directed studies every block of the day, right? So you multiply that by 25 kids in each one. That's a significant number of classes that kids weren't able to fill in their schedule. Now we are down to just 2, and those studies are most of them, not all, but most of them are relatively small. There's, you know, anywhere from 10 to 15 kids in a study now. Again, I can pull up the exact figures and put that all together, do a little digging.
And Gordon, this doesn't go to your point, but what I understand is that those 2 positions that we just spoke of, the special educator and the world language teacher, those were also a part of the cuts. And they're new positions now, but they were present then.
Yeah.
And I think too, we had looked at the numbers, right? I think it was just to the end of last year, right? Whereas this year's, those babies born in 2010, this year's 7th grade class is significantly larger than our other classes, grades 8 through 12 right now. There's a whole other class there. Those of you who live in Kingston probably recall, every year we had to hire a new kindergarten teacher, and then the next year we needed another first grade teacher, and then, right, they've sort of added staffing with this class as it's proceeded.
So I think, I mean, a couple of things. I think, and again, I'm not interested in just making the 2 things go in the same direction. And particularly want to be particularly supportive of Superintendent Cruz, curriculum goals over 5 years and things like that. I want to make sure that we have the right, number of people to support that, and we have the right ratios to support it. I think it would be very worthwhile to be able to show what those movements have looked like historically, and be able to have at least an understanding of where investment is going. I think it becomes extremely difficult to go to a financially challenged town like Halifax and say we're upping the budget 4% every year and have them say back, you're going down 1%, 2%, 3% in school headcount every year. Your money is tied to school headcount. Why do you keep spending more money? And that, again, it's not like that. If you go to a Halifax town meeting, that, you got the same guy up front who goes up and rails about like that kind of thing. So I think getting some particulars around where we've been historically and what we're looking to do would be useful. I don't personally have a huge problem with the budget as presented. I just know that that's the sort of thing that comes back.
It would be helpful information, I agree. Go ahead.
And I just want to make one comment. I want to quantify that the enrollment numbers I certainly need to become more familiar with, and certainly respect the statement that was just made, having been part of a declining enrollment and increasing needs. But the one thing I really appreciate is the focus on equity. That both of the things that you mentioned really look at equity and look at forward-thinking practices with multilingualism and co-teaching, and they both prioritized equity. So I just appreciate that.
And again, I want to emphasize that demonstrable value for money, I don't have a problem with. And equity means the world to me. I mean, I'm sitting here with the other Madisons, the lost story of the president's black family. This is what I'm reading right now. So that sort of thing means the world to me, and how the different challenges we have with kids and things like that on one hand, and the supports that we put in place. I mean, if we did not back in the day have emotional or guidance counselors or something like that that helped students deal with complex life crises, and we do now, and we added that because we were post-pandemic and things like that, I'm not looking to say no to that. It's, the world is different right now from what it was 10 years ago. But I am looking to understand what is it that we made different from where we were 10 years ago. What are the things that we're paying for, and then what should we be expecting to see?
And I think it's important for the members of the committee who've been here long-term to acknowledge that we contributed to building where we are currently with staffing. And then bringing up the pandemic is definitely something we need to take into consideration. But we were seeing sharp increases in the social emotional needs of our students prior to the pandemic, largely centered around the advent of social media and the access 24 hours a day to those kind of social pressures that our students were facing. And we also encouraged our middle school and high school principals to get kids out of study halls. That was a priority of this committee. So, Gordon, I think what you're saying, how do we illustrate that to the individuals who are just trying to do number to number, is well taken. So, I wanted to take some ownership over where that comes from the committee side, not just from the administration side.
So let me just jump in. Sorry, Chris.
Go ahead.
We go back to our student learning goals and these increased MCAS scores that we want. You're not going to do that with huge class sizes. If we want to really focus that much attention on our students' academic growth, we have to allow the teachers to give the students the attention they need. And if you've got 28, 30 kids, social studies isn't an MCAS tested subject, but I can't imagine being in a class with that many kids and trying to get them to pass an MCAS if they're currently struggling. And I don't think we want to be considering cutting staff at a time when we have classes that are still, you're saying they're average 25 to 28.
Depends on the department, but they're still.
That still
Some are pretty-
sounds big to me. So
So-
relative to like our peer districts, that sounds like a large number to me as an average.
So that point's really important, because when we were, you know, when one or two of us were kind of batting this around a little bit, we took published numbers and basically said, okay, what the head count looks like is that there's 20 students per classroom. And we said, now, you know, we'll have to acknowledge that in some places it's going to be far lower because of specialized sorts of things, and other places higher. Most of the research that I've seen on, you know, where you start to lose efficacy in classrooms is around 27 kids or something like that. So, you know, anybody who's just looking at basic numbers like that is going to say, you can't keep doing this, and you should be right about here as far as your class sizes, which means you have an opportunity to go 23, 24 without hurting students. So when we quote 25, 26, my natural inclination is obviously to give the people in this room the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, there's something wrong with like the math or what I'm looking at or whatnot, to understand that at a high level. So at any rate, I'm just asking for more understanding and detail, and it's not meant to sort of call anybody out or anything to that effect. It's, but you know, the pressures are sort of unrelenting, and we do have to answer for them at challenging town meetings. And you know, I mean, it was, you know, I was at the town meeting where Halifax just straight said no to the tennis courts, and the tennis courts were basically a fundamental disaster, and they had to like, you know, patch things together for $10,000 for a year or something like that, so that we could come back and make more of an argument. And
We also tried to vote down the Silver Lake budget as a whole.
Yeah, I think we voted it down twice in the last 3 or 4 years.
right.
And just looking at this out of the jump, you see close to 4%, the town's gonna go nuts.
Yeah.
Without the added bodies.
Without added bodies and without articles.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like not even palatable, unfortunately.
I think we've had in the past a spreadsheet from the middle school, high school, or somewhere
Yeah.
that said average math class size X, average social studies class by department. I don't know if it's been 3 years since we saw that, but I think that would be very helpful. 'Cause that's maybe where the rounding comes in, you know, 5 teachers, X number of students in social studies are 25, and they're, you know, 19 in specialized science
Yeah.
or something, I don't know. But someone sort of tagged on one of my points is, you know, 378 on the budget, without these extras, and 82% is in that wages and benefits range, something's got to give
Yeah.
on that side, on the 82% side of the equation. Because I think we've pounded this enough over the years, how to get that 18 down as far as we can. Separate and secondary, the capital plan stuff needs to come out of this and go to capital plan. The golf cart stuff, that's not an operating expense to me.
Good point.
So those need to come over to capital plan, and I hate to say get in line, but the AED's the healthy, safety thing, that's not really negotiable, I don't think, but golf cart, lifting cages, robotics, furniture, kiln, that's $65,000 worth of stuff in total on the list here.
So our golf cart
Yeah.
is 19 years old.
Yeah, I just,
State law requires our athletics trainer has to be able to respond within 1 to 3 minutes. So if we have a student on the cross-country trail.
oh, I completely agree, it might be necessary, I just don't, it's not a recurring expense. When I think operating, it's going to be recurring. These are non-recurring, it's been 18 years, like you said, so it's more of a one-time capital plan side of things there.
Then we'll struggle with it this year in the capital plan.
It'll be
though,
makes the
so-
capital plan worse, but
Yeah,
if we put 18, whatever the number for a golf cart is, 10 grand, 12 grand, we don't need it in 25's budget. So I don't want to put it in there for 1 year's budget. We probably won't try and pull it back, right? It's a one-time expense every 15 years. And piano's 15 years, but I mean, those are smaller items, I get it,
yeah.
but they're not recurring, is my only point in some of those.
Could I just mention that one of the reasons they were in the operating budget is they don't need the threshold of a capital item?
Individually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why they were in the operating budget.
Okay.
It's a good question, though, but
You had mentioned the 2 staffing positions, 3 or 2 staffing positions requested by the middle school are almost a 0.5%?
Yes. No.
0.47.
0.47.
can I ask a question, switching gears for a moment? And just to sort of make my personal comment on some of what we were just discussing. We've known the sustainability of the Silver Lake budget has been brought up year over year over year, you know. We're an enormous expense to all the 3 towns, proportionately more to some towns than others. We do need to be very cognizant of our budget and what budget we present to the town every year. So I agree we need to look, as was discussed a few moments ago, at how the student population dovetails to the staffing. Not necessarily to make a change, but again, as Gordon said, to evaluate it, make sure it's reasonable, and have, I'm not going to say an argument, but have a basis to stand in front of town meeting and say, this is why, you know, 82% of what we're asking for is staff, because it's what's needed in this instance. Switching gears from there, in our joint presentation a month or so ago, there were technology items that Dave talked about for budget this year. What is in this budget from what we talked about?
Everything that Steve Pello...
I'm sorry, I said Dave.
Everything that Steve Pello presented is currently in the preliminary budget.
Okay, all righty.
I just want to talk about the word sustainability.
Mhm.
So when I was doing my research for our budget and the fluctuations the town has seen in the assessments levied upon them, the average Silver Lake budget over the past 8 years has been under 3%.
Mhm.
Right? So I know we're looking at a number right now that's precariously close to either side of 4, depending on what we do with staffing.
And I'm sorry, Jason, last year it was 3.89, wasn't it? Or 3 point... We were over 3% last year.
It was.
Yeah.
You recall, I mentioned when we took that vote that, you know, we had not asked for anything even close to that in many, many years. And that we cut down to the bone many years on our budget, and we needed to, you know, fill back up for the needs of our students, especially after what they've gone through, to get, you know, social emotionally put back together. You know, you heard our student presentation today. She didn't mention a thing about classes. It was all about the extras, like the extracurriculars. We did this, like how proud and how happy. That's what that budget last year was for, to support that. It was to support the recovery of our students academically as well. I know that was a big number, but historically, under 3% every single year, right? So the number right now is a little scary, but we always come together with our administrative team and the school committee, and we find a number that we feel is sustainable for the towns, but is in the best interest of our students, right? So I just, before we get all carried away with the number we're seeing right now, just, it's a first pass. And I think that we'll find something that works for everybody.
Having said that, and certainly if there's any more comments or questions, but administration is looking for direction from us on this budget. We need to give them some feedback. Nobody wants to go first. I would like to see the information we asked for at the next meeting to Chad. But we need to vote the budget in March, correct? So if we're going to do some
Yes.
work to it, we need to give them some direction between now and then. 3.78, I think is high. I think we need to shave it down. I don't know what number makes sense, but I think that's,
Yeah,
Two.
this year after you're gonna have to come down a percentage.
you think that high? You think that much?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I think you're gonna have to come down a percentage point.
Yeah, I hear. No.
And I don't love that. I mean, I don't. I especially don't love it in an era of, 8% inflation and things like that. I don't know how you're getting it through Halifax if you're plus 3.
And it doesn't include the ads.
Halifax is asked for 2.
Right.
That's, our elementary, granted, very different animal. Comes in around 2, and that's like palatable. So it really makes us choke every year.
Agreed.
But it's tough. We're always in a tough position because, we heard that Kingston's in a much better
Mhm.
financial predicament than we are. I think Brooklyn's doing all right. But
But free cash isn't operating.
no, it's not. But overall,
Yeah.
they're in a
Oh, right.
better financial position
Oh,
as a town
completely agree.
than
Yeah.
we usually are. And I just feel like we have the same conversation every year for Halifax. It's like the outlier, and at the end of the day, we just have to bite the bullet, and that's a struggle for us.
I agree, I think 378 is probably a challenge, given that we don't have the ads. I almost dare say try and get down to 3 with the ads, but I don't know if that's even a reasonable request. Because while I can see the validity of what we're adding, I think the subject matter numbers and stuff might just take those ads right out and push us the other way. I don't know how that's going to swing with more information. But yeah, 3 is, I don't know how we do 3.5 again, I don't.
Yeah. So in the past, we have gone to version 2 by having tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 reductions to consider. Do we want to do that again with the idea of, Gordon's suggestion of a full percent would bring us down to say, let's say 2.75, 2.78. Do we want to see what the threshold or what the gives look like at 3 and at 2.75? Do we want to have them put together what we would have to give up to get to 3, and then what we would have to give up to get down to, say, 2.75, 2.78 rounding?
Go all the 275, and if we need to add something back, we can, because we still have the request for ads that could be added back in on top of 275.
Right.
That's one of I can't figure out how to get to 275, number one, because I don't know the intimacy of this yet. And then can even consider the ads. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars more.
Yeah. I think having the tiered items to look at and consider has been a good way for us to digest the numbers the past couple of years.
I agree.
And we all hate this. This is just, I wish there was just a waterfall of money that just came into this budget every single year, and we never had to think about cuts and balancing budgets. And
We have a lovely benefactor that we can maybe build them out there.
when I hit tomorrow night, I promise to give you a good budget for next year.
$17.
Okay, so that direction
Yep,
is, okay.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
I think, it's really tough, I just want to say this before we move on, that like one of the hardest things about grappling this budget is there's so much of it that's out of our control, like special ed transportation. I wish we could get really creative with that, because it eats up so much of our budget, but it's like, I don't know, I know you work tirelessly, this is my 8 o'clock. Trying to find a way, you know, and it's unfortunate that sometimes things that that we're bound to are the things that are gonna take away from these opportunities for our students that frankly they deserve. You know, there's still ways to get more creative with it, or to find a more creative way to rally to our legislators to change the funding formula. I guess we're here for.
Thank you, Joe. All right.
Okay. The next item is the 23-24 school calendar draft. You'll notice that we have August 28th and 29th as our in-service for teachers, and August 30th as the first day of school for students. What we've tried to do is put our half-days and vacations where we have placed them in the past. And you'll notice that the last day of school without 5 days built in for snow days is June 12th. If we were to use all 5 snow days, our tentative last day of school would be June 20th. And the only other thing that's really different is that at our Halifax School Committee meeting, they requested that we put the back to school nights, open houses, those types of dates on the same calendar, so they are listed at the back. You'll see the dates listed there, and that's the only other real change to the calendar itself.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the calendar?
Only one, probably expect this, Good Friday. I don't know why we have our religious holiday, no prejudice. It's lingering. We went this last year.
I know,
This
I
committee
know.
went through it.
I brought it up at the
Schools
joint
brought it.
meeting because I
Yep.
knew it was going to come up.
Just a lingering holiday, and I look at it this year and next year's calendar, and it is kind of a floating day, unattached to April vacation. I'm lacking historical, what's the word? Bias to keep it. That's fair.
I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. I had mentioned to a community member that I would go with the will of the committee on this. I will say prior to the joint meeting, I did look at some of the calendars of schools in the area, and the vast majority of them do have Good Friday listed. This calendar's already been voted by other school committees, correct?
Just Halifax.
Just Halifax?
In Kingston.
Oh,
Kingston
In
also
Kingston?
voted.
So 2 of them have already agreed to it. I will go with the will of the committee, but I don't know how others feel.
Chris, are you proposing to not have the holiday, or are you just proposing to rename
Not have the holiday, I don't see,
So just like go to school on that day.
Yeah.
yeah.
We would have tremendous absence on that day.
I don't know empirically that one way or the other on that one.
Yeah.
I think I would agree if it was next to the vacation week. I know families,
speaking of
vacations
someone
do
who is-
tie that in sometimes, but the last couple of years has not been tied to April vacation, so.
Speaking of someone who is fairly religiously observant, services on Good Friday tend to be after the end of the school day. I will just put that out there. They tend to be at 3 o'clock, that's the traditional time. So I'm wondering how much of the absenteeism at this point would be due to just, well, we've always not had to go to school on that day, as opposed to actually taking the kids to church for a holiday. So that's just something else to consider. I don't really have super strong feelings in one direction or another as well. And I know a few years ago, I have a lot of friends who live in Duxbury and work in Duxbury. When they had an excess of snow days, that was the first day they chose, rather than go an extra day in the summer. they said, okay, we're just not gonna go, we're not gonna have Good Friday off anymore, that's now a school day, because there was no legal reason.
Is anyone going to make a motion one way or
I
the
make a
other?
motion to approve the calendar as presented by the superintendent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Those opposed? Okay. The motion carries. Over time, I think this is something that's going to change. It's going to need to be dealt with, I think, because it's coming up more and more.
I think the trickiest part is getting all 4 committees to be on the same page.
Yeah.
That's the trickiest part.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't disagree. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All righty. New business? None on the agenda. Old business? Reports of special committees. Silver Lake Special Education Association. So now John Laurie is the president of the Teachers Union. Laurie is our new member from Kingston. I would have had John introduce himself when we went around the table earlier if I had thought of it, because I thought of it driving here. So having said that, John.
Thanks, Bob. So I guess first I'd just like to respond a little bit, my perspective about some of the budget conversation, also in my role as unofficial Silver Lake historian, having been in Silver Lake Middle School in 1992.
1999.
This is
Same.
way later. It's interesting. Some of the courses and staffing that Becky was describing, we actually had back in 1992. We took foreign language for a half year in the 7th grade and then the full year in the 8th grade. And then, I started with Spanish 2 as a freshman. Now, the way it works now is students who take it in the 8th grade can qualify to take Spanish 2 or French 2 as a freshman, but they're not always ready. A 1-year course in high school is probably a little more intensive than a 1-year course in 8th grade, so having it for that extra half a year does definitely make a big difference. I also would say in terms of special education teacher, I know that this is something that the 7th grade special education teachers, which are the ones where there's not a 3rd special ed teacher in the 7th grade, they have really felt the pressure of it and something that they've talked to me about. I'm not sure what it actually means for their specific numbers, but I know that the fact that they're traveling to service kids on different teams does put some strain on them. And my impression, don't quote me on it, I'm not sure, is that they do have slightly higher caseload. So you'd have to ask for that information if you want the official version, but they definitely feel like they have a higher caseload. In terms of the reducing enrollment, again, I don't have all the specific data right at my fingertips, but from the information that I've seen recently, our student staff ratio is about 12.5 students to every staff member, which is at or maybe even slightly worse than the state average. State average is somewhere between 12 and 12.8%. I saw, depending on where you look. So yes, our enrollment may have been decreasing lately, but it's not like our student to staff ratio is significantly better than average. It's about where everybody else is. I do appreciate the hard work that you all have to do about the budget. I know you have to make tough decisions. I believe that you all want what's best for the students and would spend all the money you could to support them. So I know that this is tough for you and no one wants to come back, but I do want to just put out there that I think these things are important, or our administrators wouldn't be asking for them.
Can I speak to that, Sam?
Yeah, please.
So, hi, I'm the vice president at the high school. I'm actually for I teach English here. To speak to what was saying about study halls, we really worked hard to get kids out of study halls and into elective classes. But I teach one of the elective classes where guys constantly email me and they're like, "Can we exceed the cap?" and I say yes, and I take those students, and I know like Sean Dunham teaches psychology, he does that too, so like, they might be capped at 26 or 27, but we'll take 28 to 30, because we know we can manage them, and because we don't want the kids sitting in study hall. So like, we're still in that place too.
Thanks, Ashley. The other thing I just wanted to mention, we are all mourning the loss of Aiden. As a personal matter, he was my student in the 7th grade in the beginning band. I taught him to play the alto saxophone from the very beginning. He continued all the way through the high school band until his last performance just before Christmas. And we really do appreciate everything that the school, the district, and Michaela did to support our students, to support the family, and to support us, to help the kids. A lot of us came in at the end of vacation for some training on dealing with grief and how to help the kids. Again, thanks to Michaela for arranging that. I just want to put it out there too that we're definitely committed to do everything in our power to make sure that a tragedy like this never happens again. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Administrative review.
So we just had a meeting prior to this evening's Silver Lake Regional School Committee to do a formative evaluation of the superintendent and her goals. And a formative evaluation is an opportunity to have a conversation and see where we are progressing towards those goals for the summative evaluation, which will happen in the springtime. And it's an opportunity to have a conversation if there needs to be any adjustments made to goals that were set prior to the school year beginning, now that we've actually been through a few months. Jill's made great progress on the majority of her goals. Seems to be on track for having some good evidence for us to consider when we get into the spring, for us to write our summative evaluations. Two things that admin review did discuss. We looked at a 5-year technology plan that Steve Pello and his team have put together. It has been reviewed by the principals and by central office staff members. It's a very ambitious plan for any of you who know Steve Pello. You won't be surprised by that. And that plan was written into some of the work going towards Jill's goals. So admin review gave Jill some time to reflect upon prioritizing what Steve had in his plan with the building level people who are actually going to implement it in their spaces, and potentially allowing to extend that from 5 to a longer, like maybe a 7-year period. So we did make that mid-course adjustment on the technology plan. Everything else seems to be on track. We also discussed that Jill is rapidly approaching her 3rd year anniversary as our superintendent. Pending the outcome of her evaluation at the end of this year, it's not uncommon for people with professional status in the teaching realm to go on to a 2-year cycle instead of an every-year cycle. So that's something admin review is going to look at, and we'll make a recommendation to the joint committee when we're going over the evaluation for the superintendent in the spring.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. CTE.
We had no meeting since last time we had a Silver Lake.
Okay. Chairman's report. I have not received any correspondence that I'm aware of. Legislative agent.
All right. So, Kathy Lenatra has agreed to sponsor a bill to make our Regional Assessment Stabilization Fund part of MGL. That was what we sent to the Mass Association of School Committees, and that would allow our select boards via town meeting to create a fund where in years where the assessment is low, they could put some dollars away for years where their assessment is high. I convened a meeting recently where I expected maybe 20 people to show up to explain how to advocate for this, and over 90 people showed up. What I didn't take into account was a lot of our non-regional school districts still have assessments from their vocational schools that they send students to, and they will benefit from this as well. So we have a much greater chance of getting this passed by the legislature this year or next year. And the reason why I say this year or next year is we've just entered into a new 2-year legislative cycle. So a lot of things go to committee during the first year, they take testimony, and then it might get referred back for a full vote next year in the legislative cycle. So Kathy's taken that on. She has also taken on writing the bill that would allow individual towns to increase their special ed reserve fund from 2% of net school spending all the way up to 5% of net school spending, which is a much more sustainable fund if you have the capability to put in those dollars in. Pushing right now for circuit breaker to be adjusted. The best way to explain circuit breaker is you take 4 times of the average foundation budget in the state, and you get 75% of those dollars back in reimbursement. It's not actually 4 times foundation budget anymore because the Student Opportunity Act kind of adjusted that a little. But we basically, it's still close enough. We wanted to get down to about 3 times what the state average for foundation is, and ask for 90% reimbursement on that. So for a student that costs potentially like $100,000 for an out-of-district placement, right now we realize about $36,000 back in circuit breaker. The adjustment would make it closer to $55,000, and that's just for one $100,000 placement. Also looking at allowing collaboratives to be able to approach MSBA funding so they can do improvements to their facilities just like we do here. And we're also pushing back pretty hard right now at the state level on why MSBA has been increasing their qualifications as much as they have over the past few years. It's getting harder and harder to qualify for building repair projects, roof projects. Keep saying, well, it has to be 28 years, and then it was 32 years. They keep just extending it up. And if you didn't know, they actually paused reimbursements in totality this year. The same year that we were sending money back to taxpayers, and we have this great surplus up at the State House for telling districts they can't put improvements in their buildings. So a couple things on the state level we're working on, and I'm going to be in DC on the 31st, and I have meetings with 9 of the 11 congressional delegates from Massachusetts. Perkins is going to be coming up for reauthorization. It's only good through FY24, so I'm going to be pushing for expansion of the federal Perkins Act so we can continue to allow students to access CT programming as close to their home districts or in their home districts as possible. And really looking at maybe pushing back on the feds again for them to take over the free universal school meals for all students back from the state, which would free up some state funds, hopefully, to help out towns that struggle to pay their Chapter 7 bills every single year. So a lot of work going on, but a lot of it is just in these very, very preliminary stages. Like we will not see the governor's budget this month. The governor has extra time and a new term to come out with it. Hopefully it will be excellent with some of the changes that we saw to the tax code in Massachusetts, but it's still really up in the air where all of the money is going to go from the fair share money. A lot of people are jockeying for those dollars.
The governor's budget, you mentioned that they get an extra time on their first cycle.
Yeah.
Do we need to worry about that here in terms of giving a March number that's not overly foggy because we don't have that number plugged in?
Christine's been here before.
We'll
Yeah.
know maybe the 3rd week in February. We've
Okay.
done it before.
I'm just curious if it's going to cause us issues as we try and
It just
better to
delays
get March
it
done.
just delays when we have a sense of the assessment.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Okay.
obviously it's held harmless, so we have a base number we can work from.
Mhm.
Another thing I'm bashing my head against the wall on right now is making sure that we get our full regional school transportation reimbursement. Last year was kind of level funded of the prior year, so there was some dollars left on the floor there, but we got some increases to special ed transportation because of the Student Opportunity Act. We ended up benefiting greatly, more than our 3.74% increase that we put into our budget. We got far more than that from the state, but always trying to find ways to get the state to pay more of it than our towns have.
Thank you.
Okay. Negotiations, we are going to give an update in executive session. PAC,
PAC once again canceled their January meeting.
Did they really? Yeah.
Yep, so our next meeting is on February 2nd. So hopefully at our next school committee meeting, we'll actually report something.
okay. Policy,
So we have a meeting on Groundhog Day. And the item that's really bringing us to the table is the discussion we had at the joint meeting about just the transparency of what we're using our surveys for, where that data is going, allowing parents to opt out. MASC, by the way, has as one of its core missions is to protect the civil rights of vulnerable students, including protecting the privacy and security of data that is collected on students and families. So I'm working with them to come up with some language we can bring to the table and just make it our own. It seemed like there was already consensus amongst the group, and we just discussed it in general, but we want to make sure we put a policy in place that makes it very clear what we're doing with our data and how parents can opt out in an easy way.
very good. Revolving funds, no meeting. Safer, we had a wonderful update on the capital plan earlier tonight. School start time? Oh, I'm sorry.
May I ask
School
a
start-
question about school start time?
Yeah,
The group was chaired by Emily Davis, or run by it, so there were a number of meetings scheduled. So I guess I'm the liaison between the school committee members or member and those groups. So I was just, how should I?
Do we need to have a point on that one?
Should I communicate with the people who?
now the team is made up of members from all of the schools, correct? It's a joint?
Correct.
Yeah.
There's some union representation.
Perfect. Parents and,
Parents, students.
yeah, and from the elementary school committees too, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So we have not met since Emily resigned.
That is my understanding.
Okay, all righty. Who else is on that?
I think Jason.
Yeah.
What's up, kids?
It's always Jason.
Are you
Yeah.
the school start times working group?
I said I would be more than happy to be a part. I've been involved with it at the state level. I caution us to be judicious with how we're using our administrators' time and our own resources, with the likelihood of it actually having any effect on our school start times. But this is something that the brain-based research has been there forever. We know it makes sense. Fiscally, we don't necessarily know what the implications are. Statewide, we don't know what the implications are at this point. Ryan, you're the one who's closest to this at this point, and have we made any major headway at this point? Still,
Well, part of the issue is without Emily, when Emily resigned, there have been some meetings, I guess, that haven't occurred.
I understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, but I'm happy to be part of it. I am, as you know, interested in spearheading another thing right now.
Oh, no.
I know.
Yeah.
And I caution all of us
Yeah,
to really trying to take on something else right now with the budget and other items coming. I don't know if we want to put it on pause, is what I'm trying to say.
yeah. So I don't disagree with that comment. The subcommittee is made up of more than just Silver Lake representatives. So we have a joint meeting, and this meeting's getting longer and longer, in February. Can we add that as an agenda item and see what the appetite is for the collective group to, weigh in on? Is this something they want to move forward with right now or put on hold? I don't disagree with that.
Thank you. That helps to
Yeah.
give direction for the January meeting, and then a determination can be made at the January one, and then that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Treasurer's report?
It's not me.
Yes, it is.
I was thinking, oh, this is the signature.
I'm going to hand it to the assistant leader, Don.
I forget. Do I need to call for a vote after I read this, or no? To have it accepted?
We
I
just,
did think I could do my one freaking job.
how about if I do it today and you can maybe do it next time?
Yeah, well,
Take notes, Gordon, take notes.
This evening, we have 17 warrants circulating. Accounts payable warrants for $1,424,824.06. 2 student activity warrants totaling $35,281.94. And 4 payroll warrants totaling $2,620,939.90. For a grand total of $4,081,045.90. Thank you for signing.
You're welcome.
that's pretty close to what I was gonna do, so much more shit.
You already did, you know. All right.
Okay. So before we adjourn, and we're going to adjourn, go into executive session, not to come back out into public session. Dates to remember: January 16th, Martin Luther King. February 9th is our joint meeting, which is going to be a little lengthier than we originally thought. February 9th is the next Silver Lake meeting. We should probably make sure, we probably have an hour baked in there between, for the joint. We probably want to make sure that makes sense. Not here, but we may need to push Silver Lake to 6:30 or something, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I agree.
Winter vacation, February 20th through the 24th. So having said that, if somebody would make a fairly lengthy motion.
I make a motion to enter into executive session, not to return to regular session for the purposes of, under Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, if no meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, the chair so declares, for teachers and paraprofessionals, and also under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general specific law specifically to approve the executive session minutes December 8th, 2022.
Second.
Okay. All right, I'm going to do a head count. Jason, a roll call, rather. Summer, Amy, Laurie,
Yes.
Gordon, Chris, and myself is a yes. Thank you, folks. I'm going to suggest a 10-minute break in between.